The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and for once, it wasn't because of my supposed clumsiness. My Aunt Victoria stood frozen, her perfectly manicured hand still suspended in mid-air where she'd been holding the glass, her face drained of all color as she stared at the phone in her other hand. The lawyer's voice continued speaking through the speaker, each word hitting her like a physical blow. I watched from across the room, my worn second-hand dress suddenly feeling like armor instead of shame, as everything she thought she knew about me crumbled around her designer heels. 24 hours ago, she had called me a charity case in front of 200 guests at my cousin's engagement party. Now she was learning exactly how wrong she'd been. The irony was so perfect, it almost made the last 7 years of humiliation worth it. Almost. If you've ever been the one everyone looks down on, the one they whisper about at family gatherings, the one they only invite out of obligation, then you know exactly how I felt in that moment. Stay with me, because what happened next changed not just my life, but exposed secrets that had been buried for decades. And if you've ever wondered whether karma really exists, I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll have your answer. My name is Emma Sinclair, though for most of my life I was just the poor relation, or Richard's daughter, you know, the one who died broke. I'm 23 now, but this story really begins when I was 16, the day my father died and left me with nothing but debt and a family who saw me as nothing more than an embarrassing obligation. The Sinclair family was old money, the kind that came with trust funds and private schools and summer houses in the Hamptons. My father had been the black sheep, the artist who chose passion over profit, who married my mother for love instead of connections. When she died giving birth to me, the family barely acknowledged it. When he died of cancer 7 years ago, they acted like they were doing me a favor by taking me in. My Aunt Victoria Sinclair Pemberton was the matriarch of the family after my grandmother passed. She lived in a mansion that looked like it belonged in a museum, with 16 bedrooms and a staff of 12. She had 2 daughters, Madison and Scarlett, both blonde and perfect, and everything I wasn't. Madison was 25, engaged to a senator's son, working at a prestigious law firm. Scarlett was 21, finishing her degree at Yale, dating the heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. And then there was me, the charity case living in the converted attic room, working 3 jobs to pay for community college. The morning of Madison's engagement party, I woke up at 4 a.m. to help the catering staff prepare. It wasn't required, but I'd learned early that the more useful I made myself, the less likely Victoria was to find reasons to remind me of my place. I spent 4 hours arranging flowers, polishing silver, and setting up chairs in the garden. My hands were raw from the work, but I didn't mind. Physical exhaustion was easier to bear than emotional exhaustion. "Emma, you missed a spot," Scarlett said, pointing at an imaginary smudge on a champagne flute. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than I made in a month, her hair already styled even though the party wasn't for another 8 hours. "Honestly, if you can't even clean properly, what use are you?" I bit my tongue and repolished the already spotless glass. I'd learned not to argue. Arguments led to Victoria threatening to throw me out, and I had nowhere else to go. No other family, no savings, nothing but the promise I'd made to myself that I'd survive this until I could stand on my own feet. The party was everything you'd expect from the Sinclairs. Ice sculptures, a string quartet, enough flowers to stock a botanical garden, and guests whose combined net worth could probably buy a small country. I wore the only dress I owned that was appropriate for such events, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought at a thrift store and altered myself. It was clean and pressed, but next to the designer gowns surrounding me, I might as well have been wearing a potato sack. I tried to stay invisible, refilling glasses and collecting empty plates, but Victoria had other plans. She'd had 4 glasses of champagne, just enough to make her cruel streak shine. "Everyone, I need your attention," she called out, her voice carrying across the garden. "I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for coming to celebrate Madison's engagement. Family is so important to us, isn't it, dear?" Madison smiled and nodded, her 3-carat diamond catching the light. In fact, Victoria continued, her eyes finding me in the crowd, we Sinclairs have always believed in taking care of our own, even when certain family members make unfortunate choices, even when they leave us with burdens. My cheeks burned as 200 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. My late brother-in-law, Richard, was a dreamer, Victoria said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a compliment. An artist who couldn't even provide for his own daughter. But we took Emma in, didn't we? Gave her a roof over her head, food to eat, opportunities she never would have had otherwise. She's our little charity case, she added with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Aren't you, Emma? Come here, dear. Let everyone see what Sinclair generosity looks like. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear into the ground. But I walked forward, my head high, because I'd learned that showing weakness only made it worse. Tell everyone how grateful you are, Victoria said, her fingers digging into my shoulder. Tell them how we saved you from the streets. I'm grateful, I said quietly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Louder, dear, and smile. You look so dour all the time. I'm grateful for the Sinclair family's generosity, I repeated, louder this time, forcing my lips into something resembling a smile. The crowd murmured appreciatively, probably thinking Victoria was some kind of saint. A few people looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. No one ever did. You may go back to your duties now. Victoria dismissed me with a wave. Someone needs to clear the dessert plates. I spent the rest of the party in a haze of humiliation, mechanically performing tasks, while inside I was screaming. That night, after all the guests had left and the family had retired, I sat in my attic room and cried for the first time in years, not just from the humiliation, but from the hopelessness of it all. I was 23 years old, and I felt like I'd be trapped forever. The eternal charity case, the family embarrassment. The next morning came too soon. Sundays were usually the worst because the entire family gathered for brunch, and I was expected to serve and then sit silently while they discussed their plans and achievements. But this Sunday was different. This Sunday there was a package waiting for me. It was sitting on the doorstep when I went to get the newspaper at 6 a.m. A simple brown box with my name written in elegant script. No return address, no delivery markings. Just my name, Emma Charlotte Sinclair. No one ever used my middle name. In fact, I wasn't sure anyone in the family even knew it. I took the package to my room, my hands shaking slightly as I opened it. Inside was an envelope made of expensive cream paper, sealed with red wax. The seal bore an image I didn't recognize, a phoenix rising from flames. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. Your father left you more than memories. The truth has been hidden for 7 years. If you want to claim what is rightfully yours, call this number before noon today. After that, this opportunity disappears forever. A friend of Richard Sinclair. Below was a phone number with a New York area code. I stared at the letter for a long time. It could be a scam. It probably was a scam. But what if it wasn't? What if my father had left something behind, something Victoria had hidden from me? It wouldn't be the first time she'd kept things from me. She'd sold all his paintings without telling me, claiming they were worthless, but later I'd discovered one had sold for $30,000. I had nothing to lose by calling. If it was a scam, I'd hang up. If it wasn't, I dialed the number with trembling fingers. Law offices of Morrison, Blackwood and Associates. A professional female voice answered. How may I direct your call? I received a letter about Richard Sinclair, my father. Ah, Miss Emma Sinclair. We've been waiting for your call. Please hold while I transfer you to Mr. Morrison. My heart was pounding. Morrison, Blackwood and Associates was one of the most prestigious law firms in New York. I'd seen their name in the business section of newspapers. They didn't handle small cases. Miss Sinclair? A deep male voice came on the line. My name is James Morrison. I was your father's attorney and, more importantly, his friend. I've been trying to reach you for 7 years, but certain parties have made that difficult. I don't understand. Your aunt, Victoria Sinclair Pemberton, has gone to great lengths to keep you from learning the truth about your inheritance, but she made a mistake. She didn't realize that your father had set up a contingency plan. On your 23rd birthday, which was last month, certain legal mechanisms activated that she couldn't prevent. What are you talking about? My father died broke. He left me nothing but debt. That's what Victoria wanted you to believe. Your father was many things, Miss Sinclair, but broke wasn't one of them. Have you ever heard of the Charlotte Foundation? Charlotte, my middle name. No. Your father established it 15 years ago, named after your mother. It was a private investment fund, completely separate from the Sinclair family finances. He was brilliant with investments, despite what his family thought. By the time he died, the foundation was worth approximately $20 million. I nearly dropped the phone. That's impossible. It's not only possible, it's fact. But there's more. The foundation has been actively managed by trustees I helped your father select. People who knew him, respected him, and most importantly, people Victoria couldn't influence. Over the past 7 years, that $20 million has grown to $40 million. $40 million. The words didn't seem real. But why didn't anyone tell me? Why did Victoria? Your father's will was very specific. If you were a minor when he died, your guardian would have control of the inheritance until you turned 21. Victoria became your guardian. She had 2 years to access that money, and she tried everything. Legal challenges, forged documents, even attempting to have you declared mentally incompetent. But your father had anticipated all of it. The will was ironclad. So, when I turned 21, the money should have been yours, but Victoria told you there was no inheritance, correct? Made you believe you were penniless, dependent on her charity? Yes. My voice was barely a whisper. She was hoping you'd never find out. The will stated that if you didn't claim the inheritance by your 25th birthday, it would be donated to various charities. She thought she could keep you ignorant for 2 more years. What changed? Your father's contingency plan. He knew Victoria, knew what she was capable of, so he set up a trigger. If you hadn't claimed your inheritance within a month of your 23rd birthday, I was authorized to contact you directly. Victoria has been intercepting mail, monitoring your phone calls, controlling your internet access. But she didn't know about the private courier service your father had arranged, the package you received this morning. My mind was spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my father, about my place in the world, was crumbling. What do I do now? Can you come to my office today? We have paperwork to file, documents to sign. Once we initiate the transfer, Victoria can't stop it. But we need to move quickly. She has connections, and if she finds out what's happening before we complete the process, I'll be there in 2 hours. Excellent. And Miss Sinclair, pack a bag. Once this starts, you won't want to go back to that house. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then I sprang into action. I packed everything I owned that mattered, which wasn't much. My mother's necklace that I'd hidden from Victoria, the one photo I had of my parents together, my laptop, my few clothes. Everything fit into one suitcase and a backpack. I left the house while the family was still sleeping, taking the bus to the train station, then the train to New York. The entire journey, I kept expecting to wake up to find out this was all a dream. But the law office was real, the documents were real, and James Morrison was very real. He was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair. His office was all dark wood and leather-bound books, the kind of place that whispered old money and older secrets. Your father was a remarkable man, he said as I signed document after document. He talked about you constantly. He knew he was dying, and his biggest fear was leaving you unprotected. That's why he set all this up. But why didn't he tell me? Why let me think I had nothing? He didn't know he'd die so soon. The cancer progressed faster than anyone expected. He was planning to tell you everything on your 16th birthday, but he died 2 weeks before. And then Victoria swooped in before I could reach you. She told me she was my only option, that no one else wanted me. She lied. Your mother had a sister in California who tried to get custody. Your father's best friend in Seattle wanted to take you in. Victoria blocked them all. She wanted control over you because she thought eventually she'd get control over your money. But why? She has money. James laughed bitterly. Had money. The Sinclair fortune isn't what it used to be. Bad investments, overspending, trying to maintain a lifestyle they could no longer afford. Victoria has been living on credit for years. Your $40 million would have solved all her problems. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. The woman who'd called me a charity case was the one who was actually broke. There's something else, James said, pulling out another folder. Your father didn't just leave you money, he left you something else. Something Victoria doesn't know about. He handed me a key and a piece of paper with an address. What is this? Your father's real studio. Not the one in the family house, but his private workspace. He bought the building under a shell company name. Victoria never knew it existed. I've had it maintained and protected for 7 years, waiting for you. The address was in Soho, one of the most expensive areas in New York. The building itself is worth about $15 million, James continued. But what's inside? Your father was prolific. There are over 200 paintings in there that Victoria never knew about. I had them appraised quietly. Conservative estimates put their collective value at around $20 million. Possibly more if marketed correctly. I was beyond stunned now. I was numb. So I have $40 million in the foundation, $15 million in real estate, and approximately $20 million in art. You're worth roughly $75 million, Miss Sinclair. Your aunt, on the other hand, is about 6 months away from bankruptcy. She doesn't know that I know yet. No, but she will soon. The transfer process will trigger notifications to her as the former guardian. She'll know within 24 hours. A thought occurred to me. A wonderful, terrible thought. Mr. Morrison, can you do me a favor? Can you be the one to call her? Tomorrow? Around noon? I want to be there when she finds out. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. It would be my absolute pleasure. That night, I stayed in a hotel, a nice one, paying with a credit card James had given me as an advance against my inheritance. I took the longest, hottest shower of my life, ordered room service, and slept in a bed that didn't sag in the middle. But I barely slept. I was too wired, too full of anticipation for what was coming. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a new outfit I'd bought. Nothing flashy, just well-made clothes that fit properly. I arrived at the Sinclair mansion at 11:45, using my key to let myself in. The family was in the main living room, Victoria holding court as usual, Madison and Scarlett flanking her on the white leather sofa. Emma, Victoria's voice was sharp. Where have you been? You missed serving breakfast, and the silver needs polishing for tonight's dinner party. I was taking care of some personal business, I said calmly, sitting down in one of the chairs across from them. Personal business? Scarlett laughed. What personal business could you possibly have? You don't sit there, Madison added. You know that's for family. I am family, I reminded her. Barely, Victoria sniffed. An ungrateful family at that. Disappearing without permission, missing your duties. I should throw you out right now. You could try, I said mildly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What has gotten into you? Have you forgotten your place? You're here on our charity. Emma, you have nothing without us. Actually, I said, checking my phone, that's not entirely accurate. It was noon. Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. Morrison, Blackwood, and Associates. What could they... She answered it. Victoria Sinclair Pemberton speaking. I watched her face as James Morrison began to speak. The confusion came first, then disbelief, then a growing horror as the full implications of what he was saying sank in. That's impossible, she said, her voice rising. Richard had nothing. He died penniless. I saw the will. James must have explained about the Charlotte Foundation then, because Victoria's face went from red to white in seconds. 40 million. But that's... How did I not... Then came the best part. I could tell when James informed her that I'd already claimed the inheritance, that the transfers were in progress, that there was nothing she could do to stop it. The champagne glass she'd been holding shattered on the marble floor. Madison and Scarlett were staring at their mother in confusion and growing alarm. "Mom," Madison said, "what's wrong? What are they saying?" Victoria wasn't listening. She was staring at me, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw fear in her eyes. "You knew," she whispered. "You've known all along." "No," I said. "I only found out yesterday. You had 7 years to tell me the truth, Victoria. 7 years to do the right thing. Instead, you stole my inheritance and made me your servant." "What inheritance?" Scarlett demanded. "Mom, what is she talking about?" "Your charity case," I said, standing up, "is worth approximately $75 million. Your mother, on the other hand, has been hiding massive debts. How much do you owe now, Victoria? 10 million? 15? 18, she whispered, all the fight gone out of her. Madison gasped. Scarlett looked like she might faint. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm leaving this house today and I'm never coming back. You will never contact me again. You will never speak my name in public. If anyone asks about me, you'll tell them I've moved on to pursue my own interests." "You can't just," Madison started. "I can and I will, or I can make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly what you did. How you stole from an orphan, how you're actually broke, how your entire lifestyle is built on lies and credit cards. Your choice." "The house," Victoria said desperately. "We'll lose the house." "Yes," I agreed. "You will. Just like you made me lose mine when my father died. You sold his house, our home, and kept the money. You told me it went to pay his debts, but it didn't, did it?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It should have made me feel something, pity, maybe, or satisfaction. But I felt nothing. She'd killed that part of me that could feel sympathy for her. There is one thing," said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a check for $100,000. "This is for Scarlett's last year at Yale. It's not for you, Victoria, or for Madison. It's for Scarlett, and only because she's young enough that she might still become a decent person if she gets away from you." Scarlett stared at the check, then at me, her mouth open. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I'm not you," I said simply. "I don't take pleasure in watching people suffer, even people who hurt me. That money will cover your tuition and living expenses for your final year. After that, you're on your own. Make better choices than your mother did." I turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Victoria, my lawyer will be in touch about the items of my father's that you sold without permission. His paintings, his books, his instruments. We have documentation of everything. You can either return them or reimburse me for their value. Market value, not the pennies you claimed they were worth." "You little," Victoria started, but I cut her off. "I'd be very careful what you say next. Everything is being recorded." I held up my phone. My lawyer insisted. "Evidence," he said, "in case you try to retaliate." I walked out of that house with my head high and my shoulders straight. Behind me, I could hear Madison screaming at her mother, Scarlett crying, and Victoria trying desperately to call someone, anyone, who could help her. But there was no one. She'd burned too many bridges, hurt too many people, and now she was going to face the consequences. The studio my father left me was more beautiful than I could have imagined. It took up the entire top floor of a building in Soho, with floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with light. His paintings were everywhere, carefully preserved and stored. Landscapes, portraits, abstracts, each one showing a different facet of his talent. But it was the portrait in the center of the main room that made me cry. It was me, painted just weeks before he died. I was laughing in it, truly laughing, the way I hadn't since losing him. At the bottom, in his distinctive handwriting, were the words, "For Emma Charlotte, my greatest masterpiece. All my love, always." There was another envelope with the painting, one James hadn't known about. Inside was a letter from my father. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've finally found your way here. I'm so sorry, my darling. Sorry I couldn't protect you better. Sorry I couldn't be there to watch you grow up. Sorry for all the pain I know Victoria has caused you. But I want you to know that I never doubted you would survive. You have your mother's strength and her kindness, the best of both of us. Victoria might break your spirit temporarily, but she could never destroy it. The money is important, yes, but it's not your true inheritance. Your true inheritance is the ability to create, to love, to persevere. Use the money to build the life you want, not the life others expect of you. Paint if you want to paint, write if you want to write, or do something completely different. The choice is yours. Don't let bitterness poison you. Victoria is who she is because she never learned the difference between having money and having worth. You've always known that difference. Don't lose that knowledge now that you have wealth. Take care of yourself, my darling girl. Be happy, be free, and know that wherever I am, I'm proud of you. All my love, Dad." I stood in that studio, surrounded by my father's work, holding his letter, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt whole. Not because of the money, though that certainly helped, but because I finally understood that I had never been a charity case. I had always been loved, always been valued, always been enough. The news of Victoria's bankruptcy hit the society pages 3 months later. The mansion was sold at auction. Madison's engagement was called off when her fiancé's family learned the truth about the Sinclair finances. She had to take a job as a junior associate at a law firm, starting from the bottom, like everyone else. Scarlett surprised me. She used the money I'd given her not just for school, but to see a therapist. 6 months later, she sent me a letter apologizing for everything. We're not friends. Too much happened for that, but we've had coffee a few times. She's working as a teacher now, living in a small apartment in Brooklyn, and she seems happier than she ever was in that mansion. Victoria disappeared from New York society entirely. Last I heard, she was living with a distant cousin in Florida, working as an event planner for a small company. She never tried to contact me again. As for me, I finished my degree, but not in business or law like everyone expected. I studied art history and studio art, following in my father's footsteps but making my own path. I converted part of the studio into a gallery showcasing emerging artists who, like my father, chose passion over profit. The gallery doesn't make much money, but it doesn't need to. I have enough. I also started a foundation, a real charity, not the fake kind Victoria claimed I was. It provides housing and support for young adults who age out of foster care or find themselves without family support. Kids who might otherwise end up as someone else's charity case, dependent on the questionable kindness of people like Victoria. I named it after my parents, the Richard and Charlotte Sinclair Foundation. We've helped over 300 young people in the past 2 years, giving them not just money, but mentorship, job training, and most importantly, dignity. Every single one of them knows they're not charity cases. They're people deserving of respect and opportunity. James Morrison became not just my lawyer, but a trusted advisor and friend. He helped me navigate the complexities of sudden wealth, teaching me how to invest wisely and give generously. He also introduced me to his nephew, Daniel, who runs a nonprofit focused on arts education in underserved communities. Daniel and I worked together on a program bringing art supplies and instruction to schools that had cut their arts programs. Somewhere along the way, between budget meetings and supply drives, we fell in love. He proposed to me in my father's studio, surrounded by paintings and light, getting down on one knee right in front of the portrait my father had painted of me. We got married last spring in a small ceremony. James walked me down the aisle, and Scarlett was there, one of only 20 guests. We didn't need hundreds of people or ice sculptures or string quartets. We just needed the people who truly mattered, the ones who saw us for who we really were. The wedding was held at the gallery, surrounded by art from the emerging artists we'd been supporting. Instead of wedding gifts, we asked guests to donate to the foundation. We raised almost $200,000 that day, enough to support 10 more young adults for a full year. Victoria wasn't invited, of course, but I heard she found out about it through the grapevine. Someone told me she'd said it was tasteless and small. I laughed when I heard that. She still didn't understand that the size of something doesn't determine its value. My father had tried to teach the Sinclairs that lesson through his life, choosing meaning over money, love over leverage. They hadn't listened, but I had learned it, absorbed it through all those years of being treated as less than, of being called a charity case, of having my worth measured in dollars I didn't have. Now I had the dollars, more than I could ever spend, and I knew with absolute certainty that they were the least interesting thing about me. The money could disappear tomorrow, and I would still be whole. I would still be valuable. I would still be me. The most ironic part of this entire story happened just last month. I received a letter from Victoria, not asking for money, she knew better than that, but asking for forgiveness. She wrote about how losing everything had taught her what really mattered, how she finally understood what my father had tried to tell them all those years ago. "I called you a charity case," she wrote, "but I was the one living on charity. The charity of creditors, the false charity of social standing, the borrowed charity of a lifestyle I couldn't afford. You were never a charity case, Emma. You were the only one of us who was truly rich." I didn't respond to the letter. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But I didn't throw it away either. I kept it as a reminder that even the worst people can sometimes learn and grow, even if it comes too late to undo the damage they've caused. The truth is, Victoria did me a favor, though not in the way she intended. Those 7 years of being treated as worthless taught me the true value of worth. They taught me that dignity can't be taken away by others, only surrendered. They taught me that kindness in the face of cruelty is not weakness, but strength. Most importantly, they taught me that being a charity case, being someone who needs help, who depends on the kindness of others, isn't shameful. We all need help sometimes. We all depend on others. The shame isn't in needing help. It's in using that need to humiliate and control others. Every young person who comes through our foundation knows this. They know they're not charity cases. They're people in transition, moving from one chapter of their lives to the next. The foundation is just a bridge, helping them cross from where they are to where they're going. Some of them have gone on to incredible success. One became a doctor, another started her own tech company, another is currently in law school. Others have more modest achievements, steady jobs, stable homes, healthy relationships. But every single one of them has value that has nothing to do with their bank accounts. I think about my father often, especially when I'm in the studio painting. I'm not as talented as he was, but I have his love for the process, for the way colors blend and light changes everything it touches. Sometimes I sell a painting, sometimes I give them away, sometimes I keep them. The value isn't in the price tag, but in the joy of creation. Daniel understands this. He grew up with money but saw how it corrupted his own family, turning siblings against each other, parents into strangers. He chose a different path, using his privilege to help others rather than to elevate himself above them. When we met, he didn't know about my inheritance. He thought I was just another volunteer, someone who cared about art education. He fell in love with me, not my bank account. We're expecting our first child now, a daughter. We're going to name her Charlotte, after my mother. She'll grow up surrounded by art and love, knowing her worth from the very beginning. She'll have advantages I didn't have, opportunities I couldn't dream of. But she'll also know that these things don't make her better than anyone else. If Victoria is still around when Charlotte is old enough to understand, maybe I'll tell her this story. Maybe I'll explain how her great-aunt once called me a charity case, how she tried to steal my inheritance, how she learned too late what really matters. Or maybe I won't. Maybe by then, it won't matter anymore. What I will tell Charlotte is what my father told me in his letter, that her true inheritance isn't money or property, or even art. It's the ability to create, to love, to persevere. It's knowing the difference between having money and having worth. I'll tell her about the 7 years I spent in that mansion, not with bitterness, but with perspective. Those years made me who I am. They taught me empathy for others who are overlooked and undervalued. They showed me the importance of kindness in the face of cruelty. They proved that dignity comes from within, not from without. Most importantly, those years taught me that labels only have the power we give them. Victoria called me a charity case, and for 7 years I believed her. I let that label define me, limit me, shame me. But labels are just words, and words only have the meaning we assign to them. Now, when I think of the phrase charity case, I don't think of shame or worthlessness. I think of charity in its truest sense. Love, kindness, generosity. I think of the hundreds of young people our foundation has helped. None of them cases to be solved, but people to be supported. I think of my father, who had the charity to leave me not just money, but a legacy of creativity and integrity. I think of myself at 16, scared and alone, carrying a single suitcase into a mansion where I wasn't wanted. That girl thought she had nothing. She believed she was nothing. She couldn't see that she was carrying everything she needed inside her: strength, resilience, the capacity to endure and eventually overcome. If I could go back and tell her one thing, it would be this: you are not a charity case. You are not worthless. You are not alone. The money will come, yes, but that's not what will save you. What will save you is what's already inside you, what Victoria can never touch or take away. Hold on to that. Nurture it. Let it grow in the darkness until it's strong enough to reach for the light. And when that phone call comes, when that lawyer speaks those impossible words about $40 million, remember that the money isn't your redemption. Your redemption is in how you choose to use it, how you choose to live, how you choose to treat others who are where you once were. The gallery is busy these days. We're preparing for our biggest exhibition yet, featuring 20 emerging artists from backgrounds similar to mine, people who were told they were charity cases, who were overlooked and undervalued, who were made to feel like their dreams were worthless. Their work is extraordinary, full of pain transformed into beauty, struggle transformed into strength. Victoria won't be invited to the opening, but I hope she hears about it. I hope she knows that the charity case she sneered at has become someone who creates opportunities for others. I hope she understands that the $40 million she tried to steal is doing more good in my hands than it ever would have done in hers. But mostly, I hope she's found some peace. Losing everything has a way of teaching you what really matters. I learned that lesson early, through loss and grief and 7 years of humiliation. She learned it late, through bankruptcy and social exile, but maybe it's never too late to learn. The sun is setting now, painting the studio in shades of gold and amber. Daniel is downstairs in the gallery, helping to hang paintings for tomorrow's exhibition. I can hear his laughter, mixing with the voices of the artists, all of them excited and nervous about their first major show. In a few minutes, I'll go down and join them. We'll order pizza and sit on the floor surrounded by art, talking about our dreams and fears, our past struggles and future hopes. Not one of them will call me their benefactor or patron. To them, I'm just Emma, someone who understands what it's like to be dismissed and diminished, someone who believes in their talent not because I'm charitable, but because they're talented. Tomorrow the gallery will fill with collectors and critics, people with money to spend and influence to wield. Some of them will be the same people who watched Victoria humiliate me at Madison's engagement party, who smiled and applauded when she called me a charity case. They won't recognize me at first. Designer clothes and confidence can change a person's appearance dramatically. When they do realize who I am, they'll whisper among themselves. They'll wonder how the charity case became the philanthropist, how the servant became the success story. Some will approach me with false warmth, pretending they always knew I was special. Others will keep their distance, uncomfortable with the reversal of fortune. But I won't care about their whispers or their discomfort. I'll be too busy watching the artists I've supported sell their first paintings, seeing the validation in their eyes when someone values their work enough to pay for it. I'll be too busy proving that charity, real charity, isn't about power or pity. It's about recognizing potential and providing opportunity. The trust fund my father left me has grown to almost 50 million now, carefully invested and managed. I could live lavishly for the rest of my life without ever touching the principal. Instead, Daniel and I live modestly in a brownstone in Brooklyn, driving regular cars, shopping at regular stores. We splurge on travel and experiences, on supporting artists and causes we believe in, but we don't need mansions or designer clothes to know our worth. The foundation has expanded beyond housing support. We now offer scholarships, mentorship programs, mental health services, and career counseling. We've partnered with other organizations to create a network of support for young adults who have nowhere else to turn. Every single program is designed with dignity in mind, treating recipients as people with potential, not problems to be solved. Last week, I received a call from one of our first recipients. She'd just graduated from medical school and wanted me to know she'd be starting her residency at Johns Hopkins. She thanked me for believing in her when no one else did, for seeing her as more than her circumstances. "You saved my life," she said. "No," I told her. "You saved your own life. We just helped with the logistics." That's the difference between real charity and what Victoria practiced. Real charity empowers. False charity enslaves. Real charity sees potential. False charity sees only power. Real charity gives with open hands. False charity gives with strings attached. Victoria called me a charity case as an insult, a way to diminish and control me. But in the end, being her charity case was the best thing that could have happened to me. It taught me everything I needed to know about who I wanted to be and who I never wanted to become. The portrait my father painted still hangs in the studio, that laughing girl who had no idea what was coming. Sometimes I stand in front of it and wonder what she would think of who I've become. Would she be proud? Would she be surprised? Would she believe that the scared, humiliated girl serving champagne at her cousin's party would one day be here, surrounded by art and love and purpose? I think she would, because even then, even at my lowest, some part of me knew that Victoria was wrong. Some part of me knew that I was more than what she said I was. That knowledge, that stubborn refusal to fully accept her definition of me, is what saved me long before the money did. The phone rings, pulling me from my thoughts. It's James Morrison, calling to discuss a new acquisition for the foundation, a building in Queens that we can convert into affordable housing for young artists. We talk numbers and logistics, the practical details of turning money into opportunity. After we hang up, I think about calling Victoria, not to forgive her or to gloat, but to tell her something I've only recently understood. I'm grateful, not for the cruelty or the humiliation, but for the lesson. She taught me, through negative example, everything I needed to know about how not to live, how not to treat people, how not to measure worth. But I don't call. Some distances are meant to be maintained. Some silences are more eloquent than words. Instead, I go downstairs to join Daniel and the artists, my chosen family, the people who see me not as a $40 million trust fund, but as Emma, just Emma. Tomorrow, the exhibition will be a success. The artists will sell their work, the critics will write favorable reviews, and the foundation will raise enough money to support 10 more young adults for a year. Victoria might even hear about it, might read about it in the society pages she once dominated. But tonight, we're just a group of people who understand what it's like to be underestimated, eating pizza and laughing and planning futures that once seemed impossible. Tonight, we're proving that the best revenge isn't living well. It's living generously, using your good fortune to ensure others don't suffer as you did. The trust fund will continue to grow, the foundation will continue to expand, and somewhere out there, another 16-year-old is being called a charity case, being made to feel worthless, being told they have no value beyond their usefulness to others. Maybe they'll find their way to us someday. Maybe we'll be the bridge between their present and their future. When they do, I'll tell them what I wish someone had told me all those years ago. You are not a charity case. You are a person with inherent worth that no one can take away. The circumstances of your present do not determine the possibilities of your future. And sometimes, just sometimes, the very people who try to break you end up being the ones who accidentally show you how strong you really are. The lawyer's call to Victoria feels like a lifetime ago now, but it was really just the beginning. The beginning of understanding that money is just a tool, that worth comes from within, that the labels others give us only define us if we let them. I was called a charity case, and for 7 years I believed it. Then a lawyer called with news of a $40 million trust fund, and everything changed. But the truth is, the money didn't change who I was. It just revealed who I had always been. Someone who could endure, someone who could overcome, someone who could transform humiliation into purpose. That's the real inheritance my father left me, worth more than all the millions in any trust fund. And that's the inheritance I try to pass on to every young person who comes through our foundation. The knowledge that they are valuable, that they matter, that they are so much more than the circumstances they're currently facing. The studio is dark now, except for the city lights streaming through the windows. Somewhere out there, Victoria is living her new life, stripped of wealth and status, learning lessons she should have learned decades ago. Somewhere out there, Madison is working late at her law firm, building a career from scratch. Somewhere out there, Scarlett is preparing lessons for her students, finding purpose in service rather than status. And here I am, no longer the charity case, no longer the poor relation, no longer defined by anyone's opinion but my own. The girl who once served champagne at parties she wasn't really welcome at now hosts exhibitions that celebrate the overlooked and undervalued. The girl who once lived in an attic now provides housing for those who have nowhere else to go. The girl who was once called worthless now knows her worth has nothing to do with her bank account. If you're reading this because you've been called a charity case, because you've been made to feel worthless, because you're currently dependent on people who use that dependence to hurt you, know this. It gets better. Not because someone will swoop in and save you, not because you'll suddenly inherit millions, but because you have strength inside you that no one can take away. Hold on to that strength. Nurture it in secret if you have to. Let it grow in the darkness until it's ready for the light. And when your moment comes, because it will come in one form or another, use it not just to save yourself, but to light the way for others. That's what my father would have wanted. That's what turns charity. Cases into philanthropists, victims into victors, humiliation into purpose. That's what transforms a sneering aunt's insult into the foundation of a meaningful life. The champagne flute shattered on the marble floor, and with it, Victoria's entire worldview. But from those broken pieces, something new was built. A life of purpose, a legacy of kindness, a proof that worth isn't measured in dollars, but in how we treat each other when we have the power to choose. I was a charity case. Then my lawyer called about my $40 million trust fund. But the most important call was the one I made to myself, deciding who I wanted to be when I had the power to be anything. I chose to be someone who remembers what it feels like to be powerless. Someone who uses power to empower others, someone who knows that the true measure of worth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. That's my story. That's my inheritance. That's my revenge, not living well, but living generously, proving every single day that Victoria was wrong about what really matters. The charity case won in the end, not because of the money, but because I learned the lesson Victoria never did. True charity isn't about power. It's about love. And love, unlike money, multiplies when you give it away. End. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, and if you believe that everyone deserves to have their true worth seen, please like on this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below. And tell me, what was the moment in the story that resonated with you the most? And if you want more powerful stories about finding your strength and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.